Hello, friends. Welcome to Flosstube and Variety Show number 33. I'm Emily Williams in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and thanks so much for joining me. Because it's Flosstube, you will hear about my cross stitch, and because it's a variety show, you'll hear about something else that I'm interested in, which I hope you'll find interesting also. So let's talk about cross stitch. I've been working on improvisational sampler, if you will, using mainly things from this book, The Ultimate Sampler Motifs source book by Brenda. And this is where I am now. I think last time I hadn't finished the alphabet and I hadn't decided what I was going to do over there on the right side of it, but you see I put a little crown in there, a couple more borders. The next thing that I'm going to do below that, I think I'm going to do a tree. It'll be fairly tall, and I mean as in 80 stitches or so, about the height that this is wide, and then put some other motifs around it. If anybody's keeping track at home, from the very top of the stitched border to the bottom of the one that's partial there, that is almost exactly 4 inches. And my goal for this is somewhere between 24 and 30 inches tall. So I'm about 1/6 of the way through it. So as I said, I'm using Ultimate Sampler Motif source book by Brenda, but I also recently got another pattern, which is this one called Harriet Salt 1866 by Hands Across the Sea. And this is a reproduction of what's called a Bristol orphanage sampler. And I mean, there are a lot of, if you follow samplers in the world, you know that there are many, many, many Bristol orphanage samplers, because there were, as I've learned, over 10,000 orphans who were taken care of in Bristol, and all of the girls between the ages of 12 and 15 or so, part of what they had to do as their education was to do a sampler. So of course that's a lot of samplers. They were all red thread on a creamy background. And this is a reproduction of Harriet Salt's sampler. And I have seen these. I like the idea of red samplers. I like red. It's my favorite color. But when I've seen these in the past, you know, they're pretty large, and I thought, well, I don't think I'm going to stitch one of those. But then I realized in working on this purple sampler that it might be handy to have another collection of borders and alphabets to choose from. And so I started poking around. And I learned something about the Bristol orphanages that helped me put 2 facts together in my mind. So Bristol, England, as I said, these orphanages, or this orphanage that had multiple houses over the course of years, took care of over 10,000 orphans. And the proprietor, the organizer, the head of this orphanage, the philanthropist who created this orphanage system was George Mueller. And I knew of George Mueller from church history, and I knew of the Bristol orphanages from the sampler collections. And then I put it together. So George Mueller was a Christian man who felt that there was a need to take care of orphans in the area surrounding Bristol. And he did so, and he never did a fundraiser. He simply prayed about what he needed, and people showed up with it. And there's a famous story that he went to bed at night and there was no milk, there was no oatmeal or whatever, gruel, whatever they planned to serve or normally served for breakfast the next morning. There was almost no food in the orphanage for, you know, a couple hundred children. And he prayed as he went to bed that they would be able to feed breakfast the next morning. And when he got up the next morning, a milk truck, horse-drawn milk truck, because this was the 19th century, pulled up with many, many gallons of milk, saying, "I just felt the Lord leading me to give you my milk today. And then somebody else pulled up with grain and flour and other things, and he was able to feed his charges that day. And there are many, many stories about that because that's how he operated. So when I put those two things together, when I realized George Mueller, about whom I had learned in church history, and the Bristol orphanage samplers made by the orphans taken care of in the orphanages in Bristol, that's one and the same story, that made me much more interested in purchasing the chart for one of these sampler reproductions. So I'm certain that I will use one or more of these borders in this purple sampler and probably an alphabet. Who knows? I might just go ahead and stitch this someday, although it's very large. It's, if I did it on 18 count Aida, for example, just to pick an example, it would be 23 inches square. The design area is 23 inches square, and that's quite large. So I would have to figure out where I would put such a thing. The Harriet Salt stitched this on 56 count linen. So her sampler was only 15 inches square. But I don't think I'm going to try to stitch it on 56 count linen. That seems very small to me. So anyway, that purple sampler. The other thing I've worked on since my last video is Flea Market Flowers, Lori Holt, and I have a thread hanging, so I'm leaving my needle minder there, but I've started on those next 2 boxes worth of flowers, and I did all the leaves first, and now I'm doing the blossoms. So that's still fun, still enjoying that. At that point, once I'm done with that, I'll be, what would you say, maybe a third done with this piece. So that's pretty good. Now, I'm also working on, or I've shown you in the past, Sweet Summer Come Again by Blackbird Designs and Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather, charted by Golden Kite, which I am not going to show today because I've either made no progress, as in the case of Sweet Summer Come Again, or I've made so little progress on Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather that even though it's actually a lot of stitches by number of stitches, it's so gray, it's really hard to see on the camera. So I'll wait and show that in another couple of weeks when I've done made more progress on it, so that maybe it would be actually visible, the progress. So that's it. All I'm going to talk about cross-stitching today. I am going to tell you about the Mid-Atlantic Quilt Festival, which my friend Cindy and I are going to go to next weekend. And in telling you about that, I'm also going to tell you that I will not be doing a video, probably will not be doing a video next week. If I do a video next week, it won't be a Flosstube, because if I do a video, it will be either from the quilt show, which I just don't think I'm going to do that, but you never know. And I won't be taking my cross stitch with me because I need my operating room style lights and super magnification, which is hard to take and use in a hotel room. So it would be about some other topic if I do a video, but I might not. Probably, you should assume I will not do a video next week. Maybe there'll be one and that will be a bonus. But let me tell you about this quilt festival. So I have been to it. I got out all my pins, and these top 15 pins, these 3 rows plus these 3 pins, are one each from the times that I went to the quilt festival when I got a pin, which I didn't get a pin every year. This one is from 1995, which is the first year I went. And then this one is from 2005. And I know I went a few times between there, maybe twice or 3 times, but somehow I didn't get a pin. I don't think I realized how fun it would be to have the pins from the show. And I can put this up closer to the phone, and you see there these enamel pins that are so shiny it's even hard to read them in person because they're so reflective. But every year when Cindy and I go now, we get the pin to add to our collection. So those 15 are from the quilt show. That means I've been more than 15 times. And then in 2021, there wasn't only an online quilt show, which we were not going to pay money to do an online class when YouTube is so rich with information. But so we got a Stitch Local pin from our local quilt shop in Cary, North Carolina. And then these 3 pins are from other occasions. We both entered the Hoffman Challenge in 2004. Yes, 2004. And because we entered, they gave us a pin. I bought this. This is just a enamel pin of a quilt block. And this is from our old quilt shop that was in Chapel Hill for several years that we really loved and still miss. But that was a pin from them. So we get the pin every year, but we don't go because of the pin, though the pin is fun. We go because it's inspirational. And there's a large exhibit floor, and starting around now, if I can figure out when now is, when I'm editing the video, I'm going to drop in a lot of pictures from some of the past times that we've been to the show, just so you can see some of the amazing quilts that are on exhibit there. So this is there's prize money in this show, and professional quilters and amateurs enter their quilts in the show. There's also quilt guilds that do a guild challenge and enter. The whole guild puts quilts in the show. So it's always pretty much a variety. Sometimes it's the guild things are, not necessarily professional quilters. They're people like me who make quilts because we love to. And the professional quality quilts are stunning, truly. And we get ideas about color, about design, about patterns. In 2020, when we only went for one night. We took a class, I think. Maybe we didn't take a class that year. We didn't have our usual 3 nights to stay. I think we only stayed one night in 2020. And it wasn't because of COVID, because COVID hadn't really become what it became. This always takes place the last weekend in February, so things were still kind of normal but tentative. But that particular year, since we knew that we were just a couple weeks away from getting our long arm quilting machine, we focused on looking at the actual quilting on some of these quilts because we wanted to get inspired as to what we could do. Eventually, we knew that we wouldn't be able to do that kind of quilting immediately, but there's a vendor area of a lot of fabric purveyors, as well as sewing machines and notions and rulers and other crafts. Yarn, very dangerous, because I do like to knit also. I know I haven't shown you any knitting. I haven't really knitted anything in a couple years. But I have yarn, which I've bought at the quilt show. And other crafts, buttons. There's a button lady that Cindy likes to visit. And there's a lot. And even though I now at this point would say, well, I don't need any more fabric. I don't need to buy fabric. I probably will buy a little bit of fabric because it's nice to come home with something that's sort of a memento of the show. And in addition to the pin, of course. And also because now we're down to one fabric store locally that's near enough for us to just run over to get something. And even that, it's still a 25-minute drive. To go to the quilt show where there are maybe 25 or 30 fabric stores represented, there's just different things offered. There's different selection. There's so much fabric being manufactured these days that it's no one local shop is going to have the complete line of everything that there is. So we go to see other things and we buy them. Also tools. I remember one time I was really interested, for several years the same shop is there. I mean, usually it's the same group of vendors, so you can even get to know the people. In fact, there's one man who I think runs a shop, a booth there in the vendor area, and he wears a utility quilt. I'm sorry, I misspoke. He wears a utility kilt, you know, with lots of pockets and zippers and carabiners or carabiners, however you say that, of stuff. And I just think, well, that is interesting. I'm sure I guess it's comfortable. I've never asked him, what does he wear under his kilt? But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yes, there was this one particular quilt type that involved buying metal dies that you use to trace your pieces around, and then you sew them a certain way. And I looked at it for a couple of years, and then one year I said, you know, Cindy, I'm going to buy this because I think this would be fun. It'd be a fun kind of quilt to make. So I bought it. And then a couple of years later, I was saying to her, you know, Cindy, I think I'm going to buy this. I had it in my hand. She said, Emily, you bought that 2 years ago. Oh, apparently I had not made a quilt out of it, had I? But we've gotten some patterns that have been really our favorites that we've made many times at the quilt show. And it's just a great place to get ideas. And we eat in restaurants and we just enjoy ourselves. So we're leaving Thursday next week, spending 2 nights. One year we left a day early because there was a bad weather forecast. And we drove up there. It's in Hampton, Virginia, so it's about a 3.5-hour drive. We drove up there and we were fine, got there fine. The next morning we woke up to 16 inches of snow. So it was really good that we went up there the day ahead. Also in that area is the needlework shop. I believe it's the one, I think it's Dying to Stitch is up there, which I've never been to. But Cindy and I are going to go. We're going to figure out where it is and we're going to go there because there is no local needlework shop near me here. The closest one, there might be one in South Carolina, about maybe a 3-hour drive. And I hear that there is a needlepoint shop in Greensboro area, which I haven't been to. And I know that there are some in North Carolina, but when I've asked on Facebook and, you know, in cross-stitch groups, what's the closest one to me? Dying to Stitch is actually one of the closest ones. So we're going to visit that shop and I'm going to try to control myself when it comes to buying things because I have things. I have a lot of things. So that's what's going to be going on. And I hope you enjoyed the pictures I put up from past quilt shows. I will be taking more pictures. If you can follow me on Instagram, I'm at 2rivers_58. And I've put that in the description box below the video. And I'll be posting pictures from the quilt show on Instagram while we're there. We are taking a class, in fact, and I'll put a picture up right now of the project that we're going to be making. And let me I wrote down her name. The woman is Marge Tucker. If anybody follows quilt people, that's who the class is from. And it's called Eelgrass and Eddies. And I'm going to do mine in black and white, so it'll be similar to the one that you see in the picture. And I think Cindy's going to do hers in some other mixed group of batiks. So it'll be interesting. we like to take a class that will let us do something that we wouldn't normally do, a technique, learn a technique, or get a project going that we might not normally do. And sometimes we learn something new. It's sort of inspirational to have 6 hours or 7 hours in the day to work on a project, to start something new. It's always fun to start something new. So we're going to do that, and when I get back, I will tell you more about it. Whether it's the very next video, 2 weeks from now, or whether it's sometime later. So I thank you for watching. If you're not a subscriber and you want to not miss a video, which I'm hoping you would not want to miss a video, in case I do something next weekend, even though I'll be gone, you should subscribe and then click the little bell, and that way you'll be notified when I put up another video. And also, not related to cross-stitching, quilting, or any of the crafts I do, I have in mind to put up a little bonus video. So watch for that. It will not be necessarily a Friday or a Thursday, Friday, Saturday time frame. It would probably go up at some random time. And it will be on this channel. It might not be called Flosstube because it won't be cross-stitch related. It'll be something else. So you can watch for that, and I think you'll enjoy it. So I appreciate you joining me this afternoon. This is the afternoon of February 18th, I think. It's beautiful weather here today. The cold front is coming through, but we have beautiful weather, and I'm just turning a little bit in my chair so you can see over my shoulder. The long shadows of the late afternoon this time of year are really beautiful. I just love how it shines through the trees this time of year. In the summertime, the shadows don't fall in the same way. Even late in the evening, even as the sun is setting, it seems different. So that's all for now. Thanks for joining me, and many blessings to you, friends.